Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session. It's Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. It's 9:06 a.m. My name is Ty Menzer, Chair of the Board, Vice Chair Commissioner Fournier, Commissioner Klaus on Zoom. To my left, Commissioner Carolina Mejia and Commissioner Rachel Grant. County Manager Leonard Hernandez and Assistant County Manager Josh Cummings here. And we have public virtual attendance available on our Thurston County YouTube channel. Written public comment may be received up to 2 hours in advance of the meeting and will be distributed to the board. Action may be taken at this meeting. First item up this morning is Timberland Regional Library 2024 Annual Report. I'm assuming we have some library folks. Come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, my name is Mary Beth Harrington. I'm one of two trustees that represent Thurston County for the Timberland Regional Library Board. Thank you for the opportunity to provide to you with the 2024 State of the Timberland Regional Library, as well as several 2025 initiatives. As you know, the Timberland Regional Library serves over 550,000 people in Thurston, Grays Harbor, Pacific, Lewis, and Mason counties. I know that you received the Timberland Annual Report digitally, which it probably is in your packets, but I brought another copy. We kind of changed up the pictures a little bit and layout a little bit, but the content is all the same.
Is that a real snake?
Yes, it is. That's our snake person. Reptile
Flesh
lady.
animal, but that looks
No, he comes on a regular basis to many of our locations and well, I wouldn't say he's a huge hit. He gets mixed reviews probably.
Sure. I think this little girl, she looks happy though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, she's happy. It's really fun. Anyway,
amazing.
thank you very much. Yes. So anyway, there is a copy for you to peruse and things like that. I want to take this opportunity to, first of all, thank the 250 staff across the district for their efforts in 2024. And I would like to begin by sharing some of the 2024 usage statistics specifically for Thurston County. So physical checkouts, we had 1,631,075, which is an increase of 19,000 or about 1% from 2023. Our overdrive checkouts we're at 1,343,962. That is a 15.5% increase since 2023, and that's basically digital and ebooks and things like that. I'll talk about that in a little bit later. We have 143,739 active patrons, and of course the Thurston County population is of 307,000. So we have a little bit closing in on half the population are active patrons. And active does mean that you just have a library card. It means you're actually using it, which is kind of what we look at. It's great to know how many people have library cards, but if they're sitting collecting dust in their wallet, it doesn't do us much good. Here are the 2024 highlights for the 5-county district. This is for all 5 counties. Patrons reached a new milestone in 2024 of over 2 million digital titles borrowed. This achievement illustrates the library's commitment to serving all members of the community in innovative ways, including with a large catalog of ebooks, audiobooks, 5,000 e-magazines, and other digital media. And aside to that, I have been told, I'm always cautious to say this when somebody tells me something, I want to make sure I get it right. I have been told that number of 2 million places us in the top 10 digital checkouts in the world.
Awesome.
I don't know. You probably, know what I mean about these statistics. I don't know if that's accurate or what, but that's what I've been explained to me. Our expanded access hours were introduced to the Amanda Park, Salcombe, and Mountain View libraries. And just as a reminder, the expanded access hours allow patrons to use our services, patrons 14 and all up, use our services between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. daily, including Sundays and holidays. That is, they have a little key card. They can go into the library when the staff are not there and utilize the library. They can do printing, they can do computer work, they can do, check out books, etc. So that brings us now to 12 EAH libraries, including Tenino, Westport, Elma, Hoodsport, McCleary, Packwood, Ilwaco, Mountain View, Salcombe, Nassau, Amanda Park, and Ocean Park libraries. And again, I've been told, I understand that this means that we have more of these type of libraries than anyone else in the country. And then you can use the same card at all locations. So like I have a card, and if we're driving around and nature calls, you can go and use the restroom if you need to, kind of thing. Since last fall, our Nassau location is a full-service self-serve library. We do have programs that we offer with staff, but otherwise it is a self-serve library, which utilizing EAH. Our Anywhere libraries, don't call it a bookmobile, our mobile services launched in Grays Harbor and Pacific counties, in addition to Thurston, Pacific, and Mason counties. Among a variety of locations, including Head Starts, schools, senior living locations, which were closed to the public. Thurston County Anywhere librarians, Amarina and Brent, visit, for instance, the Senior Center of Rainier, Prosperity Grange in 315, Carleon, I know you guys know, I know what I'm talking. What?
Carleon?
Carleon. I always look at it when I say it wrong. Carleon Beach Clubhouse, thank you. Rochester United Methodist Church, the Firs, Clearwood Community Association. And in some cases, these individuals will go to 2 locations in one day. This is really backbreaking. To me, it's backbreaking work because they basically take a library. They'll bring in printers. They'll bring in computers. It's not just books. It's ebooks. It's whatever needs to be brought in to create a library in that room. In 2024, with this program not quite up 100%, the Anywhere Library team reached over 15,000 people at hundreds of locations throughout the 5-county area. And then this year is the first year we'll have 100% of all the counties. Staff refreshed the Westport and Salcombe libraries with new layouts, furniture, enhanced children's area with play structures for social connection, improved safe staff workflows, and flooring and paint. So Westport, for instance, got a tree house. So they have a tree house in the middle of the library. It's really fun. Kids love it. And then we have construction of the new Mountain View Timberland Library, 8 months in the making, and the first in decades. And I have to tell you, most of you, I'm sure, have done some kind of construction project. This project came early. We finished early and on budget. Kudos to the staff for that.
Where is that at?
That's Mountain View, Lewis County. Yeah, like between Morton and, yeah.
I see it on the map. Yeah, it's very.
And that is a completely new building. Most of our buildings, or a lot of our buildings are, city-owned or partnership with the city or something, but this is completely new. Of course, we've done increased programs for all ages at all libraries, and you can go to the trl.org website for more information. Last year, we received, for the 5th year in a row, a clean financial audit and a clean accountability audit from the State Auditor's Office, of which we are incredibly proud. And also, we launched a monthly podcast. I'm going to tell you the name of the podcast. It's called No Shh. It's the TRL podcast. And it's a really great podcast where we talk about our approach to library services and meet the needs of 550,000 people. We've had programs on finances, how we get our funding. We've had programs on intellectual freedom. We've had programs on strategic planning, explain the Anywhere libraries, just different programs. And I think they're frankly pretty entertaining. We launched a new online store to offer TRL merchandise, so you can buy t-shirts and bags and things like that. And we facilitated a year-long strategic planning process for the 2025 to 2029 strategic direction with community members, staff, and board of trustees focusing on digital literacy, sharing our story, and supporting school-age youth. I represented the board on that strategic plan, and one of the things we did was we sent out a survey of people, what they like about the library, what they like to see, that kind of thing. And I'm sorry, I'm not a huge fan of surveys. I don't think you get necessarily great information. I don't think a lot of people responded. And the last time we did such a survey, I think we got like 1,500 responses. This time we got close to 7,000 responses. And the interesting thing is most of the responses, when they talked about what they wanted in the library, they were things we're already offering. So that's why Share Our Story is one of the pillars of our strategic plan, because we want to make sure that people know more about what we offer. Here are several 2025 updates. As I mentioned, the new Mountain View Library opened on January 11th. There's a new online library card registration option that's available on the trl.org website. You probably are aware that Olympia was closed for 2 weeks in late March and April for maintenance and IT upgrades. During that time, it was cleaned and sanitized the entire library, including carpets, public restrooms, interior and exterior windows, and pressure washed the front entrance of the building. We cleaned all the furniture. We installed new computer stations and ADA computer area. We refreshed children and teen areas and improved holds pickup and public copy machine stations. We also installed new furniture with charging ports and moved and upgraded the Friends book sale area. So a lot of things were done that time. The Tumwater Library, if you are aware, is closed currently. We're using the service center as a supplemental library for this time. It's currently being refreshed with new paint, layout, furniture, a new play structure, which you really want to see, but I can't tell you anything more about it. Anyway, and more, and will be open June 28th. The Ocean Park Timberland Library received a refresh. The library will receive a refresh. The library will close June 16th until August, and that library will receive new interior paint, flooring, lighting, electrical upgrades, and more. There's a new checkout equipment will be introduced in May, and this new equipment will have a built-in library catalog search. And then we're also in the planning stages for a Lacey Library refresh in 2026, and that's in conjunction with the city of Lacey. The Lacey Library is probably our most, I'll say, used location. So it gets a lot of attention. I'll end, Cheryl, I know, likes to end with quotes, and I'll end with a quote. A library in the middle of a community is a cross between an emergency exit, a life raft, and a festival. They are cathedrals of the mind, hospitals of the soul, theme parks of the imagination. On a cold, rainy island, they are the only sheltered public spaces where you are not a customer, but a citizen instead. And that's by Caitlin Moran. Do you have any questions for me?
Commissioner Mejia.
Can I ask about the Tumwater Library and when that one is set to reopen again? I know it's been under
June 28th.
June 28th?
Right. June 28th is when we're set to open. The flooring went in this last week. And yeah, you want to be there for the opening. It's going to be quite exciting.
Or that's usually the library that we swing to on the way to Costco, so.
Yeah, I know. And then you have to switch, now you have to switch, I know. It's disconcerting and it's challenging when the library is closed, but trust me, it will be worth the wait. I'm really excited about it, as you can tell. And just so you know, I want to emphasize these refreshes that we have done, our staff does a lot, well, most of the work. In fact, if you've been to the Shelton Library, they have a ship in the bottom of the basement of the library. And it's totally ADA compliant, so anybody can go and use it. And that is something that our staff put together. We have a mushroom in the Mountain View Library that kids can climb up into. So, like when I say you're going to be really excited about Tumwater, you're going to be really excited about Tumwater. Other comments or questions?
The strategic plan?
Excuse me?
The strategic plan, did you
Yes.
say it was completed?
It was completed, we completed in 1 year, and it's for the next 5 years. And basically, it focuses on digital access. And by that, what we want to try to do is bridge the gap between people. So, people who have questions about how to do something on the computer can possibly come in and get some services from us. We're not quite sure how that all works, but we're looking at that. Then sharing our story, because like I said, some people would say, well, it'd be great if I could check out a blood pressure machine from the library. You can, and people don't know that. And then also focusing, the previous strategic plan focused on the younger children, like birth to grade school, and now we're focusing on grade school to high school, this next section. Doesn't mean we're changing anything about what we're already doing to support that younger generation, but basically to focus on that group.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, I believe there's been talk about TRL purchasing the city of Tenino library building and then owning it themselves. Can you update on that?
Let me think. The Tenino City Council brought this to our attention, and it was something that the board has, it's an offer that we've looked and taken under advisement. But as far as I'm trying to remember, I don't think we've made a formal decision as yet on that.
Okay. Yeah, just as far as libraries and library deserts go, that is one library that serves a huge amount of geographic space. And I just remember when budget cuts got tough, that was one of the first ones that was targeted to be closed, despite the fact that it serves, communities like Rochester, Tenino, Maytown, Rainier, like just a huge swath of land. If there ever was any, and really what kept it from closing was the fact that the city of Tenino owned it, and there was some leveraging of I guess there was some politicking involved in that kept it afloat and kept it alive. If there ever was any acquisition of that building, I would hope that there would also be some kind of assurances that building would not be vulnerable to budget cuts just because it's so isolated and can it can easily not get as much love as, say, the Tumwater or Lacey Library.
Well, let me address that, a couple of things. First of all, I was not a member of the board. I was not even located here when some of the time period that you're referring to, but I've done exorbitant amount of research into all that. And just to clarify, there was no, quote, plan to close any locations. Some of the board members made a request that given the possibility in the future of challenging funding times, that they wanted some kind of document that the administration developed that would indicate what to do if basically funding became obsolete. What would you do? Like end of the world type of, I'm not end of the world, but bad things happening type of thing. And so, yes, there were certain locations that were identified that would have to be really reviewed. But that was never a plan. It was never anything that was going to be continued or started or anything like that. It was just, like you would do an emergency situation plan, a disaster preparedness plan, so to speak. One of the things that we initiated a couple of years ago was a report that the administration does so that whenever we are reassessing the location, and that could be to increase, add a location or to limit a location, it goes into, we call it I think it's called a spa report, but it basically goes into everything. We don't just look at checkouts or people who walk through the door. We do look at the population. We do look at the census, and we look at all the mediating factors, how far it is from another location and different things like that. It's a quite comprehensive report for us to look at so that when we have to make some tough decisions, which, could, you never know when could happen, then we have something to look at. And so taking into consideration how many people are served by Tenino and its location and how far it is from other library locations and everything that goes into that would be taken into consideration. But as I can assure you that right now, that is not a consideration whatsoever for this library or this branch or location or any of our locations at this point in time.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a few questions. So I'm curious about, you may not know this, that's fine, but
I'll say I don't know.
$28 million budget, you said you guys had a clean financial audit. Do you know how many financial staff the library has? Like roughly?
Not many. I know we have one person predominantly who reports to us, not Cheryl, but another individual, another staff person who reports to us. She might have an assistant, or she might actually go to other individuals to get additional information. But Paige tends to provide us with most of the information. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, I'm just trying to highlight I assumed you had fairly minimal staff.
Yeah, we have
That's an
okay.
impressive, accomplishment, and if I was wrong about that and you had a huge team,
No.
that would be instructive for us to know too.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, I mean, just from a personal standpoint, I was with the Dallas Public Library, and we had 29 locations, which is the same amount as Timberland, serving probably a little bit larger population. We had 600 staff. We had 600 staff in the Dallas Public Library system, serving 29 locations. We have 250 staff here. We are a lean, mean fighting machine, I like to think.
Well, and the other thing about it that I was thinking is that it's not just a $28 million budget. That would be one thing if it was within but the way you're so those are like 29 different budgets, right?
It
With
is.
different, probably people keeping track of stuff and having to consolidate that across the way
In 5
it's
counties.
such a multi-county, multi-location structure, I would imagine would make accounting challenging. And so I just want to give you guys kudos for that.
Thank you.
Second thing I wanted to ask about, and again, if you don't know, that's fine, but in the past, Cheryl had mentioned this incredible sort of digital access connection that you could take your library card from here and you had to go in person to the Seattle Public Library, and then but by doing that you could connect to a different network that was huger and essentially create incredible digital accesses. I don't know, maybe that's been updated and that's not a thing anymore, but if it is still a thing, I just wanted the public to hear about it. 'Cause
absolutely.
I was kind of blown away by that when I heard about it.
I believe what you're referring to is interlibrary loan. Now, we do have partnerships with other entities, local, like Seattle Public Library, but what I like to think about is the interlibrary loan, where you can actually check out books from all over the world, potentially. I mean, it depends on the book, and it depends on, there are sometimes fees attached to the shipping of the book materials and things like that, but yeah.
This is digital only.
Oh, through digital, oh.
This is what
Okay.
it was we were on one platform, which
Yeah.
was good, but then the Seattle Public Library was on a different platform, which was massive, and we had ability to connect into their
into them.
platform. But you had to physically go to the Seattle Public Library to sign off on it.
I
And
don't.
it was
I'm not,
anyway,
yeah, I'm sorry, I don't.
no worries, but just letting the public know that was a thing, and maybe we'll get up. Maybe you could email us an update on that.
Yeah, I will,
Because it's one of those weird things that might not be true today. That might have been a quirk of a year or two ago when I first heard about it. But if it isn't, I know it really was an amazing opportunity for our residents to orders of magnitude expand their access to a digital library. Okay, cool. My other question was, I was curious about the board. Obviously, you sit on the board. How's the board working as a team? Have meetings been cordial and collaborative? Have there been challenges? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Just at a high level, kind of how's that going?
I think we have an incredibly passionate board, and the challenge for any library, and you know this, is that I was thinking about this last night. When I say the word library, pretty much everybody has a certain impression of what a library is. But the challenge is that libraries do so much. Our mission, just so you know, our mission is the mission of the Timberland Regional Library is we connect our diverse community to ideas, experiences, and each other. Now, I suspect that most of you, when you think of library, that wasn't maybe there were certain words like books or information or something that was included, but that's our mission. And so that mission precludes that a lot of people have different ideas. So we have some good discussions. We have increased our board retreats so that we can continue to have some good discussions. We get input from the community. Sometimes the community is really excited about something, and sometimes the community has been misinformed or has misunderstandings of some things. And that happens. I can't imagine that ever happening with you guys, right? So, but yeah, I think our board is working really well. One of our challenges, and I know you're aware of this, is that we're missing 2 board members at this moment in time. We're missing a Thurston County representative, and we're missing a Mason County. So,
Just took care of that yesterday.
I heard
And I
there was
hope
something.
that if you haven't met Ms. Hedinger, I want to say, hopefully you guys can connect soon.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I wasn't sure it was done or not.
We hope that we've selected a really good candidate for your purposes of representing the county.
Sure, thank you. So that means we've had 5 people instead of 7. So.
Okay, perfect. Anything else for Mary Beth?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the report.
Sure. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next up is 2024-25 Biennium Budget Amendment Number 2, first review. We have a packet with lots of information, and I'll turn it to the county manager.
Our budget team that's coming out of the dugout, take a chill. You got there.
Thank you.
Well, as we start, Chair and Commissioners, just a big thank you not only to the budget team at the table, but to all our staff and departments and offices that continue to do a lot of hard work as we work through the amendment, but we also work with our developing TC Connect system. We are making progress, but there's still a lot to go. With that, I'll hand over to Summer, and she can introduce her team and kick it off.
Summer Miller, Budget and Finance Manager, situated in the Commissioner's office. And to my left are our Senior Budget Analyst, Tiff West, Jennifer Smith, and Dolly Alfonseca. And they are here, we're all here to help drive this budget amendment preview with you. So this is your 2024-2025 budget amendment 2 first review. A couple of things that I'd like to highlight for the board. The Board of County Commissioners has statutorily provided authority to amend the county budget during the fiscal year. This includes supplemental appropriations because of the unanticipated receipts of federal, state, and local revenue sources, and for transfers or revisions within departments. Typically, budget amendments are limited to emergencies, technical corrections, updates to budgeted beginning fund balances, and new awards from outside sources. It's really important that these budgets that are submitted are thoroughly analyzed and incorporated the challenges and opportunities that offices and departments are foreseeing. Budget staff are available as a means of support to all the different programs across the county, but we are not in place to stop or remove the requests that come forward to the Board of County Commissioners. The budget team is anticipating a few changes. We're looking at 2 additional amendments in 2025. So we have a draft calendar. Currently, it is still in draft form because we are working as a county to close out fiscal year 2024. So we would like to add in a new amendment 3 to capture impacts driven by the state budget adoption. We're anticipating that that would begin in July into August. We'd like to shift the current calendared Amendment 3 to Amendment 4, and that is to finalize additional budget considerations as the county seeks solutions to TC Connect and closing fiscal year 2024. We anticipate that'll start in September. The biennial budget build for 26 and 27 is anticipated to start after summer recess. So what this is telling you and all of the viewers across the county is that we anticipate that there will be 3 budget processes happening after this one finalizes next week. So something to consider. Any questions there?
Just for context, for the commissioners and also for the organization that's watching, we have the normal budget process, the amendments and the closeout and all the technical things that need to be done. And we have at the same time the build of the 26-27 budget process. And in that process, the additional work that we're doing to drill down into understanding the financial components and why things are short, how do we shore those up? And so that's why there's a huge thank you, not only for the work we've done to this point, but for the continued work. What I will say is this is an opportunity for us. Is it a lot of work? Yes, but it's an opportunity for us to, with fresh eyes, look at some of the processes we have in place, to adjust those and to work those through with our departments and offices so that we are creating a tighter approach in how we're monitoring things and bringing the numbers forward and really creating a new pattern of bringing information to the commissioners more frequently and doing some analysis on trending, both past and then future trending as well. So I see a lot of great work forming and I know that it's pressure on everything else that we have going on in this organization. So we do appreciate your patience as we work through it.
Thank you. Moving on to the next slide. Here's your Amendment 2 timeline. It is very compressed. So today is May 21st. It's our first review and preliminary decisions. Next week on Wednesday, May 27th, we will have our second review and final preliminary decisions. It's important to note that these final preliminary decisions that are voiced from the board to the budget team will be incorporated as a final document that we will publish the weeks of June 5th and June 12th as notice of intent to amend the budget. We will bring the resolution forward on June 17th for the board to formally adopt the Amendment 2 request as you see fit. There will be no public hearing. It's not necessary unless there's a capital budget change that requires an amendment to the CIP. And we will not take changes on the 17th. So it's really important to understand that this is a very short window of opportunity. Any questions? No? Okay. So I'm going to try to orient you to the slides that are upcoming to the packet that was sent out to you. In the packet, I will call out my page numbers and try to help you because I think they're not numbered in order. But this is essentially the operating, what we call the operating recommendation summary. It is a summary by fund of the maintenance requests on the left side, summary by fund policy requests on the right side. The top line in both summary columns is showing you the general fund revenues and expenses that are tied to the change requests as they've been submitted by the offices and departments. And below the top line on both sides are all of the other funds within the county that have submitted requests. This also includes requests that are submitted on behalf of offices and departments. And what I mean by that is if there's a credit card rebate or if there's a bond adjustment that we need to do, those things are captured here as well. It's also important to note, in the bottom left-hand corner, I added a total of all requests before we had our wonderful budget designer add that in. And then there's also total general fund policy and maintenance requests as the second line, and a total of all other funds policy and maintenance requests, so that you can see the impact of all of the requests as they've been submitted. Every request, submitted to the budget team has been reviewed first by our team members. They have reached out to their program seeking clarification if they needed clarification. They've incorporated that into their review, and then I did a final review. And the final documents as submitted in this packet were sent out to the elected officials and the department heads, letting them know what will be presented to the board today. And this is a change in process that we will continue as we move through every amendment and every budget, midterm or build scenario, so that we are providing transparency to offices and departments on what it is that the board will be reviewing.
Yeah, our desire is that no one's surprised by the information that you're going to see. And why I appreciate that is, one, because this is a partnership with our offices and departments, but two, it means that the budget staff here at the table, but also in departments, are working things earlier, so their timeline is moved up so that we can get our hands on it, and have time to understand it and communicate it out before this meeting here. That's a process improvement, so that we try to alleviate any of the confusion that would happen if we're just coming with the request straight into this meeting and haven't really worked that back and given the offices or departments a sounding on, here's what we understand your request to be. I want to thank the team, because that is an additional workload, since we're moving the timeline up, and then the communication out and the back and forth.
Thank you. And one thing I failed to say is I was going to orient you. This is page 5 on your packet. So moving on to the next slide. The information that was on the previous slide is captured in this visual aid to show you the estimated general fund forecast for the end of 2025 and the out years if you were to approve all Amendment 2 general fund requests. You can see that we still have a declining fund balance, and that is beginning in 2026 at about $1.8 million.
Sharon, did you have a question?
Well, how did you read my mind? I didn't put my hand up, but I just was this graph being the way it is almost like less useful now than the actual table that you had on the previous one. And you're probably going to summarize this, but just to make sure I'm reading it right, it looks to me like the cumulative impact of all of the requests, maintenance, and policy that are general fund minus revenue is about $2.1 million hit. If we were to approve everything, we'd have a $2.1 million increase or decrease of general fund, because you had like about 2.8 or whatever, and then there's the revenue that's added up in those two tables. Do I have that about right?
It's about right. So if we move on to the next slide, it's similar to the ones you've seen in the budget reviews. And the projection is based on the revenue estimates year over year. So if we consider 2025 and prior budget reviews, we're still at 53 million in property tax, 28 million in sales tax, 41 million for all other revenues, 1.5 million in the diverted county roads. Just for clarification, I know that this has been a point of discussion with the budget analyst. The 4.7 in road levy shift is included in the 53 million, bulleted at the top here. And then this is also showing the 161,000 in maintenance requests and the 654,000 in policy requests.
I will say that Public Works has indicated to us that the road shift fund is having, as we continue to do that, which is absolutely the board's discretion, is having operational impacts on their department, significant operational impacts. And they're looking at the out years, so it's, and what that means to them and their ability to continue to do projects and keep the staff that they have in place. And so we're signaling this to you on your dashboard as a yellow flashing alert that, and we'll bring more information back as Karen has a chance to really get into what that means in the out years, but it is something we should be discussing and probably will come back to the work session to have individual conversations with that department.
That
But
is true.
did we answer your question though about the net, the overall impact?
Yeah, I mean, well, can we go back to the table that you started with?
Sure.
So down there in the bottom left, where the second piece, it says total general fund policy and maintenance, 2.889 million.
Yes. That is for the expenditures that are listed here.
Right, but then there's revenue, and look at the two green lines, it's 161 and 654. So
Yes.
it's fair to take off 800,000 of revenue.
That is,
So
it
the
is a fair
net, the
statement.
net hit to the general fund would be about 2.1 million.
Sure, and that is absolutely, yes, you are correct, and that's captured on the slide we just left from. So at the top of this slide on the right,
Yep.
we're showing all of the revenues, including the change requests as submitted. That's in the top right, the bottom two bullets, and then the expenditures is showing the bottom two bullets, the maintenance requests and the policy requests. So we have incorporated into this visual aid both the revenues and the expenditures within the amendment to requests that were entered. So yes.
Chair, does that fully answer your question?
Thanks.
Okay.
I can break out for next week in the prior slide, that bottom left-hand corner, where it's not just the total of all of the expenditure requests, but I can break out what the net difference is and make it a little easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, once you start talking about the individual requests, you're like down in the weeds and you're
Right.
kind of lost. So it's like, I like to start out with everybody kind of seeing like the big picture.
Where we're departing from.
If we were to just say, everybody gets what they asked for, okay, that we would have 2.1 million dollars less in our general fund.
It's helpful feedback. I will incorporate that for next week. Thank you.
Well, is it? I guess we'll see that with, once we go into the individual request of it, you know, one-time funding versus one-time request, or is it ongoing maintenance? I understand it's maintenance, so it's gonna be on the, but with the policy request is, does that take into account the, or maybe there isn't just one time, maybe they're all ongoing?
Summer, how many of these are one-time on the policy level?
I don't have that information offhand. I do know that several of the policy requests are backed by revenue. So that isn't shown in this slide deck, but we can talk to those points within this packet if you would like to do so.
We'll provide some definition. If there's any one-time, we'll have them called out.
Perfect. Okay, so one note here. Thank you. So the next slide is a summary. So just for your orientation purposes, if you're looking at your packet, this would be on the bottom of page 1. And that will show you basically midway through the page. This is the beginning of your maintenance request general fund. On the left-hand side, it's going to show the revenues, and on the right-hand side, it's going to show the expenses. I summarized it into this view for you so that you could see a side-by-side comparison of what's backed by revenue by request. So this slide is showing the maintenance requests for general fund were submitted by the assessor, by the Superior Court, prosecuting attorney, non-departmental, which is housed in the Commissioner's Office, and Human Resources. And it's showing you that the revenues are in the far left column. The expenses tied to the requests are in the second column. We've added columns to show you if it's backed by revenue, if it was mandated or previously approved, or if it's off-cycle or has no revenue associated with it. It's also easy to see if you're looking at this that, for example, on Superior Court, the Blake funded position, which is the third line down, that it essentially is zeroing out. There's a net effect of nothing to the general fund because you have 57 million, 57,000, yes, sorry, thousands, 57,000 in revenue and 57,000 in expenses. Side note, we are working with the developer to change the way the figures are reflected here so that you're seeing 57,000 and 1.4 million because this has created some confusion back and forth in our own conversations. Are there any questions about this layout?
I liked this slide when I went through it, just those columns with the X's were helpful.
That's what we thought, to try to give you.
We haven't had that before.
Dig into the spreadsheets, to try to give you a high-level roll-up, and then to break out. I think what the budget team has done is good. If there's, in future conversations, if there's any other detail you'd want to see so that you can see what boxes are being checked or not, we are open to receive that feedback and input.
This is helpful to view alongside the bottom of page 1 of your packet and the top of page 2 of your packet, because those are all of the requests submitted, maintenance level requests for general fund and all other funds.
Just for clarification, where it says mandated or previously approved, is that previously approved by the board?
Yes, so there's variations. Either the board made approvals during the course of the year, or there's a contract in place, or there's some statutory requirement that was passed down. So if you go down to the prosecuting attorney, the bottom line there, they had a reduction in funding of $100,000. So they're removing the $100,000 in general fund revenue, but only $11,000 in expenditures because they have incrementally been reducing their expenditures over the past couple of budget cycles, whether that was the midterm or the build. So this is the remaining amount of expenditures that they need to cut from their budget to offset the $100,000 revenue reduction that they anticipated and have now realized.
That's them doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
So we appreciate their partnership in that.
And a really great job spending the time with Tiff and, kind of explaining to us the nuances of how that works so that we all understood that. Any other questions here? Okay. So if we go to the next slide, that didn't work. Okay, thank you. This is also, I'm sorry, these are the policy requests general fund. So that would be in your packet, the bottom of page 2, and it continues through the 4th page of your packet. Policy requests as submitted. So this high-level summary view here is showing you again the revenue into general fund, the expenditures that would be coming out of general fund, whether it's backed by the revenues mandated or previously approved or off cycle. So this will help you to understand what essentially is budget neutral in the requests. I do see here that the second to the bottom for the sheriff operations internet service, Tiff and I did have quite a bit of conversation about that. So I believe that is not backed by revenue, but I believe it is something that we would need to continue because what I understand is the building that has the internet service, they were required to remove the prior tenants were required to remove the devices that provided the internet service. So the sheriff's office is needing to reinstate that service.
That came forward as a board item. And
So like on corrections, the first item says budget authority for medical services contract increased insurance premiums. If that's checked as an off-cycle no revenue, why isn't that a maintenance thing if it's already contracted
This is
insurance and that premiums go up?
That's a good question. So if the offices and departments entered these as policy requests or maintenance requests, we did not edit
Okay.
the scenario in which they entered the request.
But it could have been put in as maintenance probably.
It could have been, and so if that's something that we need to vet out a little bit further, we're happy to do so. I am not aware if they had contracts in place for these two services, but we are happy to look into that.
Yeah, we are trying to be responsive to the dynamic of departments and offices stating their needs and then going through reviewing it, making sure we understand it, and then giving you an overview, high-level overview. So if there's some things that may need to move buckets from one category to the next, we can continue to have those conversations.
If it is a maintenance request, we can make a notation of that, which I will highlight for the board where we're making notations. But at this point, we would not move it over from policy to maintenance. The county manager is correct. We're trying to clearly communicate and bring forward the information in the best possible manner for your consumption as you're, considering the decisions that need to be made here, and not apply any of our personal thoughts to what's happening. We are strictly here to gather the information, vet it out, and provide it to you as clearly as we can. Are there any questions on this one? Okay.
So, I'm gonna ask
Sure.
I do have a question. So, for example, using district court, on the district court line, so add FTE to support contracted services. And it's selected as no revenue off cycle. So, I know this is my first time through this, and so, I'm trying to just listen and, see how this rolls out. But, my question would be, will there be a point in time where we're able to say, do we need to use general fund for this, or could we use a different fund for this? Because, if there's savings in a different fund, such as Blake or TST or several different funds that could be used for a district court staff. Will there be a point in time where we're gonna look back in like Q4 and then do an adjustment of utilizing funds for that position and not just moving general fund to it?
We can look into that and have these conversations. District court is currently funded primarily through general fund. There is a little bit of funding set aside for district court and superior court through the trial court improvement fund, but the use of that fund is very limited and the fund balance is very low. So it is the board's prerogative if you want to increase funding in any of the general fund.
To answer your question, because we're in the scenario that we're in, we will definitely be looking at the different funding sources to see if they're unspent and to then determine what's the flexibility of how they can be used and bring that as part of the conversation back for you as commissioners. In fact, I really believe we should be doing that a couple times a year. And they would be doing it on a monthly basis, tracking all the different funding sources, because if there's a bucket that is flexible and it's unspent and we can move it around, that's the conversations that this board has had in the past. And I think we can do a better job of tracking that in a way that you can see at high level and go, what can we do in some of these funds to shift responsibility from the general fund?
Okay.
Thank you.
No, I think it's a great question.
And then for each of these, there's like these narrative, back, like that one, I hadn't actually cross-referenced a lot of these yesterday, but that one I hadn't. And so that's interesting to see what that's all about.
Yeah.
Something about Lacey violations. Oh,
Yeah.
Commissioner Fournier, go ahead.
Reach of the
Just to the kind of the discussion that was being had, I also want to say we're also, I think, in no place to be making promises to any departments or any other groups, or any type of alluding to expanding services and stuff like that, it feels like we're really not in a place to be making those kinds of comments.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions about, it's hard. I mean, each one is its own little
It is.
historical bundle of stuff. I have a lot of questions about that one, about the Lacey's. And we have a contract to do violations, but is that like a flat? So then they just decide to dump more work on us and we don't have any way to capture that cost, or do we, or?
We will be. So this is one that is actually still being worked on in real time. We are working with District Court, and we're working with City of Lacey, because ultimately we need to do a rate study and adjust for full cost recovery, like we are doing, like the proposal we submitted to the City of Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and I think it'll capture that. We have signaled to them that there's gonna be that study, and then we'd have to sit down and explain why costs are different. But the contract with Lacey is unique in that it has a cap. So
So they can just get rid of more work and push it to us?
well, they're being good partners in that they've come to Frankie and are wanting to partner on the addition of a position. It's really the question about finishing this half year and then getting into the next year for the full cost. And that's where there's some discussion that's going back and forth. Josh is involved with Frankie and Summer and city leadership on what that can look like. We know what we would like, have the city cover the full cost, but we're trying to work at what they've anticipated and how that works.
Just affirm, the City of Lacey has been a good partner in that process, but we are seeking full cost recovery for the work that will be done by District Court. That conversation is ongoing, and it has been difficult because of everybody's budget constraints, but I would like to make it very clear that Lacey has been a good partner in the discussion.
We're not wanting to blindside them, so this cap, they're aware of it, the city manager's aware of it. I had a great conversation with him, he's a great partner. But we need to do the rate study and then come back and figure out how the costs are gonna change. Just some foreshadowing that as we share that information, nobody likes the costs to go up, so it'll be something for Lacey to have to consider and work through. But we'll give you ample information and a heads up before we share anything out.
And to Summer's point, we're not holding things back from departments and offices submitting their requests. So Frankie put this request in so that this could move forward while we're also having those conversations about funding.
It'd be our desire that those costs could be covered by the city of Lacey, but we're trying to work that through right now.
I'm assuming the word that's used in here, absolving, is supposed to be dissolving. City of Lacey is dissolving its violation bureau. Just to make that clear, absolving doesn't make sense.
Yes, thank you.
As you're reading the narratives that are associated with these requests, I just want to point out, and maybe you've already identified this, but any edits that have been made have been highlighted, and then our team is underlined. And by edits, I mean additions, right? Because to offer clarity.
Oh, okay.
So
the underlying pieces you guys added as commentary to the original submitted request by the department.
Yes, and trying to keep it really tight and succinct, and removing any personal aspect from it. So it'll say budget, it'll show you who on our team made the addition and what that addition is confirming or not confirming, maybe in some cases, and what the additional information is. And this is after consultation and sometimes several back and forth interactions with the finance leads within the different offices and departments.
It's another transparency measure.
That's right.
That's very helpful. I do love that part.
And that is what was sent to the offices and departments. They received the high-level entry. This is what was entered by your staff. And then when there were edits made or additions made, then I included that in the body of the email is here's what we have put hands on and offered additional clarification for the board.
So this happens 4 times a year?
Not typically.
So, yeah, that's the
Usually
part.
twice. We're gonna have a third one because,
Twice,
but
okay.
usually twice, yeah. In June and at the end of the year.
It's really supposed to be a cleanup. It's like
One time, right? Yeah.
it's like supposed to be the time where you technically come together and clean things up. But in an environment where economy has been, the outlook has been unstable and things have changed, and then there have been cuts. This is not, we're not talking cuts for the first time, cuts were happened for the 24-25 budget. There's more movement, and I think what we're getting our hands around is a process that can incorporate that and make it clear.
I'll just say, because I've been here the longest, like, this is very typical. We say that it's just cleanup, but it's never been just cleanup. It's always been anywhere from a little bit of almost all cleanup and a little bit of policy stuff to
A lot.
a lot. And it's very frustrating, because the timelines are so compressed, and when you're trying to evaluate, I mean, just, like I say, we could probably spend 45 minutes discussing just that one piece for district court and what the history and where it's from and where what are other sources. Like, I mean, they're all little puzzles.
Right.
And when you have like
Yeah.
200 of them
Yes.
and we have limited time, it's impossible. And like, so I mean, like the
That's your job. I was a budget chief, so I
amendments
used to
can
do
make
this
my
for a
head
living, but.
explode because of all
Yeah.
that, but like it's a function, and Leonard was alluding, I think, touching on it, but it's like it's not just like the fact that revenues, like, it's a function of the fact that our county's underfunded and there's pent up needs in every department and office. So everyone very, very understandably, stretches when they have needs to communicate that to us and have us, and even if it's a stretch for an amendment, but, people do it, and we try to sort of keep controls and side rails on that, but it's just, elected offices they get to do what they want to do.
Right.
That's just how it works, how we're structured, so it's always challenging.
I think you hit the nail on the head, that's the starting point, is the underfunding, and the fact that as Thurston County grows, and its need to grow its operations and its services, that's the pressure. It's no one's doing anything wrong or has a bad intention. They're looking at, they have to be responsive, and so they're putting these requests in a vehicle that is there for board consideration. How we work that out is the opportunity that we have since about January till now, to create a flow that gives you the information you need to look at the gauges so that you can make informed decisions. It's tougher when you're having to cut, but the mechanics work the same as when you have more money, because when you have money coming in, because you want to look at where do we need to put the money as a benefit and an investment into getting a different return on how we do government in this county.
So, the reason that I'm just trying to kind of get my head around the process, right? And that, these reports are great. Thank you for, bringing this. And this is very similar to, the way we would do something at the state policy level and maintenance level. And we would do it once a year though. But we would also incorporate kind of that adjustment of what was left over. We would line up, I think that's the question that I was having around, what money didn't get used for in which bucket in order to, say, it's kind of like there should be like one more column here that says, is there money somewhere else that can cover us? That kind of thing. And that, I think that's where, or is this just gonna end up being something we have to take a hit out of general fund? And I guess that's the ultimate question that I think that I have of, is it all just gotta come out of general fund, or do we end up with money left over on the table in these other buckets of funding? But anyway, this is interesting. Wow. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move on from the general fund requests to, back to maintenance requests for all other funds. That's putting you back on page 1, bottom of page 1, continuing on page 2. So the reports that come out of the new budget system, this is all new for us, right? We're all working in a new environment, it will be internal service rates at the top. It'll show you the adopted budget, then it rolls into maintenance requests, and it's gonna roll into policy requests. Then you'll roll into the summary, and you'll roll into the narrative. So that's why we're kind of flipping back and forth, because we wanna focus your attention on general fund regardless of the type of request that was entered, and then we'll go to the other funds, which is not driving our out years fund balance challenged in general fund, but equally important to look at these requests. So this one, again, is showing you the request as submitted. You can see what's backed by revenue, what isn't, what you've previously approved. So I should switch pages, my apologies. There we go, okay. The only thing that I really want to highlight here is the request for human resources. It is entered by human resources, but that is specific to the recently ratified contract for sheriff's corrections.
Yeah, it's not their department expense. It's on behalf of the organization, the sheriff's office.
And that would be reflected too, back on the general fund side, it should be, yes, on maintenance request, general fund, also under human resources. But are there any questions on these requests that were submitted here for all the other funds?
Is an ER and R rollover?
ER and R is the, what does it stand for? It's the equipment replacement
reserve, it might be,
yeah. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's the cost to replace the equipment.
Assets. Okay.
We're still on page 9.
We're on page 9. Any questions here?
So on that one, it says backed by revenue and off cycle, no revenue.
It is off-cycle, not necessarily no revenue, but it is moving the expense authority forward.
Okay, just a cleanup step.
And you'll see this a lot for ER&R because the plan is to purchase vehicles in the previous year, but it just gets
Yeah,
shifted
just to
forward,
move
so.
forward, yeah, okay.
And I believe in that one, there was some level of addition also to the narrative, breaking out exactly what those costs were. To give you a little more clarity. Is that the one, Dolly, that had the CPAD additions and things? Do you remember those?
This is pretty cool though, because you know what else it tells us is that there's a whole bunch of revenue coming in for different kinds of things across the county. Different grants and funding that people have gone out and gotten and.
Yeah, there is success stories there.
Yeah, a lot
Definitely.
of, lots and lots of line items of people working hard to get grant funding, so that's cool.
The county has always been very successful in going out for revenue and
Yeah.
going out for grants, and they've been very creative.
It's really
So-
neat to see this all in a row like this, it's great.
Yeah, we thought the roll-up was helpful when especially when you show the revenue coming in.
I thought, yeah, I think after we reviewed it together, it seemed like this is easier to digest versus the first few pages of the packet. Because there's just so many columns, it's all intermingled, right? And this just kind of draws your attention specifically to what it is that's being asked. So if we go to the next slide, number 10, these are the operating policy requests for other funds. Again, it's at the bottom of page 2 through 4. The narratives are at the end, pages 9 through 14. I think they're labeled 1 through 6 policy requests. You can see again what is backed by revenue, what isn't, what you was previously approved or is carrying forward by contract. And I'm open to any questions if you have any on these. Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to capital. This is the summary for the capital requests, and this would be in your packet. It would be page 17. Again, it's showing you the maintenance requests and the policy requests, summary by funds. Was there a question? No? Okay. So summary is just showing you what the total revenues and expenses are. If there's no questions, then we'll move on.
And I do have a question.
Okay.
And I'm looking also at the summary here, and as I'm looking at the different requests, policy request, and from the different ones, right, and seeing that the revenues in some instances does not match the expenses, and I'm wondering, in those instances of those funds, how are we doing?
The overall health of each of the funds, I have not reviewed them for this month yet. I don't have any concerns with these funds at this moment. We've been talking as a group about real estate excise tax. I think the county manager mentioned earlier the roads and transportation fund. You know, that is a concern in the out years if we continue to do a levy shift. The road diversion, it's my understanding through conversations with Public Works, needs to continue to stay on the books because it pays for some of the sheriff's patrols in rural areas. It's a reimbursement type, if you will. And I believe they're bringing items forward for some utility rate increases. There's some discussions on that.
We can get you a specific overview on, you're referring to the policy request side, correct? Yeah, we'll get you an overview on each of those funds on the health level. But you have that information. We'll send it to the full board. You have that information as you're taking a look at this slide.
So you'd like to know what we're anticipating fund balance to be and what we anticipate the out years to look like?
I would just like to know, yeah,
Okay,
that sounds good, actually.
we can get that. We'll get that to you before the end of the week for consideration for next week. And again, this is the same as the operating side. There is a roll-up of the maintenance requests and it's all in other funds. Nothing touches the general fund for these. It's the same on both pages. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or we can take a notation and bring that back to you or send that out to the group.
And most of the ones that are negative are because we are moving them forward. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Because we didn't get it done or something?
Or they're finished. I believe in the case of the top one that's listed for the treasurer on this particular page, this is a public works project that is completed. So is that the one
It's they were going to pay off something.
Yeah, to pay off the loan.
But
So
they
there's essentially an ecology loan and an ILA in place, and the terms have been satisfied. So this is removing that expense for this year. And so we're looking at how do we satisfy the rest of what is on our books. So we're working with them internally. We should have something back to you on an errata for next week.
Can you explain what that's, because that's a weird word, unless everyone else knows it except for me, but errata?
The errata list is something that we'll bring back next week, and it essentially is any last minute additions or changes. So if you as a board decide that you want to fund something at a lower level and you tell us, we make note, we'll put it on a separate list and present that alongside the final version of these requests. What's stripped out. So it's just anything added or edited. Thank you. So same thing. Any questions here? Okay. So that brings us to the end. Our next steps are next week. On Wednesday, we have amendment to second review and your final preliminary decisions. Again, we will be posting the notice of intent to amend the budget for a little over a 2-week period. And then we will be bringing forward the finalization of what the board chooses to adopt by resolution on the 17th.
So I guess I want to know, like, how are we going to make the decisions that we have to make? Like, we had a way we did it in the past and people were critical of that. I know Leonard and I've talked about it. I think you've talked about it right from the very get-go of you being here.
Yeah.
I know how I prepared to make those decisions. Wasn't easy, but I'm familiar with it. I've done it, a dozen times. Are we changing that process? How are we going to get to the board decision on all of these items? Is it we used to have spreadsheets. Robin would organize them by categories, and then there'd be, the buckets that were kind of fast because they were kind of just maintenance level stuff, contractual, all that. And then we got to the policy or the more discretionary, and we went line by line, thumb up, thumb down, debate it through, follow-up questions. I mean, is that how we're doing it? Because it's like, I need to know how to prepare to be ready to do what we're going to be doing.
So, it's a great question. This current budget situation, the non-funded policy requests, that's really where the discretion lies, and they don't have funding behind them. The ones that are maintenance and have funding behind them, we're going to recommend that the staff would recommend that you approve them. Staff's recommendation is that you not approve any of the policy requests that don't have funding behind them. Now, we need to hear from commissioners if they'd like to go into specifics. We can have, well, you have the information ready for us to go through and talk about those individual requests. But I think where we're at is it is tough to increase the problem we're trying to solve through containment and then other conversations we're having on that side if we grow the ongoing general fund deficit.
Because just the maintenance only is going to increase it by 1.8 million or something, right?
Yeah, it will. And that's in this budget, we built in kind of that status quo approach. And some of the maintenance drivers are what the team is looking at on this parallel track conversation we're having about budget containment and other components as well.
So with that, so maybe a good approach for me, probably my seatmates, but I'll just speak for myself. A good approach would be to, with that recommendation as a baseline, go through all the policy ones and see if there's something that I feel I want to argue for that should be considered even, versus a flat denial of non-revenue backed policy, and then kind of dig into those items.
Absolutely.
And
if you were to let us know, let Summer know, Senator Nino, hey, these are the ones I'm interested in talking about, and we can make sure that we're prepared and work with the office or department, because our desire is to facilitate the conversation for you, knowing that ideally we're not making the issue we're trying to solve bigger. But we know that there are needs that departments have, and we believe that, and offices, we believe that they need to express those needs, and they've done so in the work they've provided in this documentation.
And for the maintenance like stuff, I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds. I mean, can you speak, I guess I'll look at Summer.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to that? I mean, is it,
Sure.
I know like in the past with Robin, we've been like, okay, what do we like absolutely have to fund? Like almost like a subset of the maintenance, versus like, we cannot not do this.
Absolutely.
The must-do list, I think she called it.
Sure. So on the maintenance request for the assessor, the fully fund salaries and benefits, that was something that the board approved when it was brought forward by HR for some reclassifications of positions. The board approved these positions, I believe it was in March, with about a $60,000 price tag, and that's what was entered
And that's why it's
here.
got that second column.
Absolutely,
of
because
X.
the
That
board
makes
already
sense.
approved the reclassifications. The second one that's listed there for the assessor, the assessor is, their staff has put in a request to increase services funds. And that particular request is tied to the statutorily required mailings that come out of that office. We had some conversation back and forth trying to seek additional clarification on what that dollar amount looked like for an increase. We did some research internally as a team on some of the past invoices paid, and we weren't able to really determine what the amount of increase should be, could be, to continue that conversation. So we've left this here, that it's off cycle. It is something that is ongoing within their office. There is funding provided at this time. A little bit unclear if the funding is enough.
But we do know that costs are going up, so we support the fact that this request needs to come forward. I think the reality is, it's impossible for us not to grow the county's budget year after year because of inflationary costs. Costs of business go up. So there's always going to be maintenance level increases that we cannot hold back. In fact, when we look at adjustments to the budget and what does that look like, we have to factor in that any adjustment is going to have to include maintenance increases year over year. That's just the reality. I think in an environment where our revenues are behind those expenses, then it comes up to, that's where the policy requests are more discretionable. And that's where the discussion comes into play about how much information you need to feel comfortable saying yes or no to those items. With the understanding that our desire is, don't increase the problem we're trying to solve, the ongoing deficit, increase it as little as you have to. So, in the specific situation that Summer's mentioning, we support the assessor's presentation of, my costs are going up, costs of doing business, costs of mailing out notices are going up. So that's kind of what that's about.
And we are happy to continue the investigatory piece of that and go back to the staff in the assessor's office to vet out what that number looks like. It just was unclear as of the production of this slide deck.
Thank you. And I'm looking at that, and that's actually pretty easy to get my head around. I mean, the biggest chunk of that's obviously the corrections contracts.
Right.
And
Sure.
that's
Colas.
the decision that we made.
Right.
So there's not really much to say about that.
If we go to the next one down.
If I could, just
sorry.
real quick.
Mhm.
Can you speak to detention sales tax transfer? Is that not represented in these slides?
It is not represented in the slides. I will be sending an email brief out, and I plan to add this to the errata. I needed to have some more communication with the county manager. So detention sales tax is currently paying the bulk, 99% of the 2016 bond. Detention sales tax has been underperforming in revenue receipts for the last 4 years by a significant amount that should have been adjusted. So because the revenue expectations were not adjusted, the expenditures were also not adjusted. So the fund cannot continue to bear the full cost of the 2016 bond, which is due to be paid off in December of 2030. The remaining balance on the bond that is tied to detention sales tax is just under $22 million. The annual payments are roughly $3.5 million. There's an interest payment that's due in June each year. There's a principal payment that's due in December each year. Those payments are netting out to roughly $180,000 or so, and about $3 to $250 in June, and then about $3.2 in December. I have spoken with bond counsel, I've spoken with the bond advisors, and I've looked at the language in the resolution, and the bond was approved and funded with the understanding that the payments would come from detention sales tax or general fund. So we need to shift the entirety of that bond payment to general fund, 22 million. It will be a payment to, from the general fund at about $3.5 million per year. And we need to structure a resolution that the board will need to adopt to allow detention sales tax to pay general fund back with market rate interest over the period of 10 years. That is sustainable currently. So a 10-year payment plan from detention sales tax to general fund would be roughly $1.7 million a year. So the team is working on structuring what that repayment schedule would look like. Big kudos to Dolly. Dolly is my rock star when it comes to bonds and bond payments and kind of vetting out some of the things that I need more details on and I don't have the time to wrap my hands around, but this is a...
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
But this is part of the opportunity with, someone coming in with fresh eyes and the team activating in a different way. They're looking at the assumptions that were built. And we have to remember that in 2024, there was a lot of transition that took place when the former budget fiscal manager left, and then the assistant county manager took over those duties for a minute. Summer comes on board and they start cross training. So we're in the process of shoring that up. We'll kind of present this in a very clear understanding, but it will mean that shift that Summer mentioned, and the general fund will have to pick some of that.
Because the payments for the bond have to come out of one account. Is that the idea?
The way that the bond language, the resolution language is written is it has to come from detention sales tax or general fund.
But it can't come from pieces of both.
I think that gets a little messy. You're still looking, I don't think that's the cleanest way to do it because the bond is payable, it's due December of 2030. And detention sales tax can't pay that, right, over 5 years or 6 years. It needs a good 10 years to manage that payment. So I think just to make it clean, it's easier to transfer the entirety to general fund and let it assume the payment structure as it's already written. And then have detention sales tax just transfer that money back. It's cleaner all the way around.
What we don't want is the fund going in the negative.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a function of kind of what Commissioner Grant was mentioning, like 5 years ago, budget team came and said, we have extra capacity in detention sales tax. So we stuffed it with a bunch of extra expenditures so that we could meet other needs out of the general fund, kind of doing that exercise that you were talking about. But then revenues the projections didn't, hold up. So now we overstuffed it.
We overstuffed it in, sorry.
But then we took it out. I mean, we had this conversation, and so I guess I need to see it broken down because the board went through this conversation, I think it was 2 years ago or a year ago where we were going through detention sales tax and we removed positions, added them to general fund, even though it was a huge hit to the general fund. That way, we could give a break to the detention sales tax. And so that to me, we were told at that time, even with the revenues that were coming in, that, that's all it took. So this, hearing this now, we've been hearing this, is I just really need to see that chart because the board has already taken measures and steps to try to alleviate that. I mean, I remember that was one big piece of the conversation a couple of years ago.
Just before I forget, if you can send us the timeframe, if you can, because I know you have a really great memory, we can go back and watch the live stream or the live stream of that, and then see if all those components were implemented to make sure that what we have today wasn't something that needed to be finished from former board direction.
Okay, yeah.
I do know that during that timeframe, $1 million or so, Jennifer and I went over this this past week, of salaries were transferred from detention sales tax. From detention sales tax to general fund, and it was for corrections deputies. So we are aware that that shift happened to alleviate, and that was a good move. I think the bigger message here is that the revenue expectations that are set across all of these different funds, they need to be reviewed and revised regularly, right?
That's
So
what
what
I
I
was trying to
saw
say, yes.
was we whiteboarded this out, was about 5 years ago. Revenue estimates were, and this is, sorry, just from a visual memory, were say 6.8 million. They came in much higher, so then the revenue estimates were increased to maybe 7.5 million, $8 million. The revenues underperformed, yet we kept that as the revenue estimates. And then when the revenues actually came in slightly higher, the revenue estimates were increased again to over $9 million, and we've been underperforming.
And these are conversations that Summer and I are having behind the scenes as to how we're building our internal approach to what it takes to maintenance a budget. Because a budget is like a garden. You have to have regular maintenance of it in order for it to yield what you want it to yield versus it just becoming overgrown and unwieldy. And so what I'm seeing is a team finding things, grabbing hold of them, understanding them. But to your point, Commissioner Mejia, the historical context, I just want to make sure that every T got crossed, I got dotted in that change, because I think there's a lot of opportunity we have as we move forward to have clearer documentation, and I think you're seeing some of that laid out, and that's the way Summer is approaching this and the way their team is approaching it. Is it more work? I'll look at the budget analyst. It's a lot more work, but it's the work that needs to be done so that we can avoid some of these pitfalls.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of one of the biggest things that I'm kind of continuing to say, and I think you guys are doing a great job, just this first discussion of this first fund, right? That there's several different funds. It's not just detention sales tax, and there's funds that are going to come into this new budget. So when you discuss, there's a couple different bills that were passed that will add additional funding to our, to our public defender's office and things like that. So, but just the fact that we can look really closely at these and then adjust and move salaries around and be able to, make those adjustments, I think that's really the thing that I'm most concerned about. And if that's just on you, I think you guys can just do that job as long as you're just telling us what you're doing. But yeah, I mean, that I think it's great.
I agree, yeah. We would want to report out, hey, we did not achieve what we thought we were going to achieve, or it underperformed, or it overperformed. And so there's those adjustments. You just have to make those regularly, keep sensitive so that you don't have a situation where you don't have what you need to pay the bills.
Okay, so we're coming back. Can you go back to that last slide on next steps?
Sure.
we
Did
can
you want more information on these So what I was gonna say is for the Superior Court one on this particular slide is what I understand is it's required and adjusted from what was the Office of it, the Administrative Office of the Courts, is that correct? Jennifer's like, what?
Sorry, I was looking for something else.
The judges, the PAO, the Superior Court increases to salaries. So like the PAO is tied to that because his increase didn't come with the other electeds at the end of the year. And so this is also the increase to that position and the court judges. So just letting you know. Because I think you all were looking at policy requests, right? And we were trying to go through maintenance really quick before the conversation diverted.
Well, I have to go to an appointment, but I'm going to ask real quick on this because I think what we are trying to get to is how we're going to make the decisions, right? So on the policy level, so can you flip to the policy level?
Sure.
For example, though, I'm pretty sure I'm following along kind of what's going to happen next week, which is that we need to look at the ones on the right-hand side and decide whether, go through them one by one and decide what's going to happen. But the ones that are in the middle down there, the budget authority for medical services contract, the insurance premiums, those are actually maintenance level adjustments. I don't think we really have a choice. I just want to make sure that we
You see what she's,
I do,
I mean,
on the sheriff's
I feel like
corrections.
we should move them over, but, just kind of wanna,
thanks for flagging that one.
yeah,
Sure.
I mean, cause they, maybe it's a teaching moment for the sheriff's budget staff that these are, cause those are cleanup steps that we don't have a choice if their insurance premiums go up. It's just like one of those things that happens every year.
We can talk to departments if there are other revenue sources that they can look at. We can put that call out to offices and departments. And what we'll do is from this, Chair and Commissioners, we'll provide a clarity on, like, this is how we're gonna approach. My desire would be, knowing that staff's desire on the policy is not to increase where we do not have to. So if there's items that you looking and would like more information or feel particularly strong about or want to discuss with your peers, you could send those to us in an email, that'd be great.
But the next meeting is what, a week from today?
Yes.
Oops.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Questions? All right, so we have some quality time to spend with our
Your spreadsheets.
spreadsheets. Commissioner items? Is that?
We're done.
On that
Yes.
item? Okay, don't want to cut you guys.
Thank you, Chair.
If there's more to say. Anything we need to address before we adjourn this morning? Okay, we'll be back for Commissioners check-in at 1:30, I believe. Is that right, Amy? 1:30.